The 8 men who are survivors of the syphilis study at Tuskegee are a living link to a time not so very long ago that many Americans would prefer not to remember, but we dare not forget. It was a time when our nation failed to live up to its ideals, when our nation broke the trust with our people that is the very foundation of our democracy. It is not only in remembering that shameful past that we can make amends and repair our nation, but it is in remembering that past that we can build a better present and a better future. And without remembering it, we cannot make amends and we cannot go forward. So today, America does remember the hundreds of men used in research without their knowledge and consent. We remember them and their family members, men who were poor and African American, without resources and with few alternatives. They believed they had found hope when they were offered free medical care by the United States Public Health Service. They were betrayed. Medical people are supposed to help when we need care, but even once a cure was discovered, they were denied help and they were lied to by their government. Our government is supposed to protect the rights of its citizens. Their rights were trampled upon. 40 years, hundreds of men betrayed, along with their wives and children, along with a community in Macon County, Alabama, the city of Tuskegee, the fine university there, and the larger African American community. The United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It was an outrage to our commitment to integrity and equality for all our citizens.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is another video brought to you by Lights Out Radio, so I'm just going to dive right in. We're going to be talking about the Tuskegee experiments down in Alabama. So, in the midst of the Great Depression in 1932, the U.S. government appeared to be giving away free health care to the African-American sharecroppers in Macon County, Alabama. Not so bad, right? There was a serious syphilis outbreak in this area of the country at the time, and it appears as though the government was helping to fight it. That's so nice of them. However, it eventually came to light that the doctors let 622 men believe that they were getting free health care and treatment, but actually gave them no treatment at all. Instead, the purpose of the Tuskegee experiment, aka the Tuskegee syphilis study, was to observe untreated black patients as syphilis ravaged their bodies. The United States Public Health Service ran the Tuskegee experiment from 1932 to 1972. It was the brainchild of senior official Dr. Clark, but he hardly worked alone. Several high-ranking members of the Public Health Service were involved, and the study's progress was regularly reported to the government and given repeated stamps of approval. But originally, the study's directive was to observe the effects of untreated syphilis in African American men to 6 to 8 months, followed by a treatment phase. But as the plans were being finalized, the Tuskegee experiment lost most of its funding. The challenges of the Great Depression caused one of the funding companies to back out of the project. You know, this meant that researchers could no longer afford to give treatment to the patients, but however, the Tuskegee doctors didn't cancel the project. They adjusted it. The study now had a new purpose, to see what happened to a man's body if he didn't get any treatment for syphilis at all. The researchers thus observed the men who had syphilis until they died, lying to them about their condition, to keep them from getting treatment anywhere else. They watched as their bodies slowly degraded and they died in agony. When the Tuskegee experiment first began, doctors already knew how to treat syphilis using arsenic therapy, but the researchers deliberately withheld information about treatment. They told the patients that they were suffering from bad blood to keep them from learning about syphilis on their own. The experiment was unquestionably illegal. By the 1940s, penicillin was a proven effective treatment for syphilis. Laws requiring treatment for venereal disease were introduced, and researchers, however, ignored all of this, right? Dr. Thomas Perrin Jr., one of the study's leads, wrote his annual report that the study was, quote, More significant now that a succession of rapid methods of schedules of therapy for syphilis have been introduced, end quote, right? Monsters, man. In short, he maintained that the Tuskegee experiment was more important than ever precisely because so many cases of syphilis were getting cured. This, he argued, was their last chance to study how syphilis killed an untreated man. So it's like the 1940s, they set up syphilis treatment centers and stuff, and these people were told that they could no longer get the benefits of the study if they went to these treatment centers. So that's crazy to me. So now that everybody's getting cured and they figured it all out, they're like, oh, well, let's keep this going just to torture these people and figure out what exactly happens if it doesn't get cured. That's fucked up shit. So in all of the years that this reprehensible study was active, nobody stopped it. By the 1940s, physicians weren't only neglecting to treat the men's syphilis, they were actively keeping them from finding out there was a cure. We now know where we could only surmise before, that we have contributed to their ailments and shortened their lives. In 1969, 30 years into the study, a committee of public health service officials gathered to review its progress. Of the 5 men in the committee, only one felt that they should treat the patients. The other 4 ignored him. Ethics weren't a problem. The committee ruled as long as they established good liaison with the local medical society. As long as everyone liked them, there would be no need to answer criticism. That's what they came to. Trust them, they're good to go. You know, it's hard to imagine anyone wanting to be associated with such an experiment, let alone anyone from the historically black Tuskegee Institute and its staff of black doctors and nurses. But that's part of the sad history behind this study. Now, the patient's main contact point was an African-American nurse named Eunice Rivers. Her patients called the observation building Mrs. Rivers Lodge and regarded her as a trusted friend. She was the only staff member to stay with the experiment for the full 40 years. Now, Rivers was fully aware that her patients weren't being treated, but as a young black nurse given a major role in a government-funded project, she felt she couldn't turn it down. I was just interested. I wanted to get into everything that I possibly could, she recalled. Rivers even justified the study after it went public in 1972, telling an interviewer, syphilis had done its damage with most of the people. She also mentioned the research provided value, saying the study was proven that syphilis did not affect the Negro as it did the white man. It took 40 years for someone to break the silence and shut the study down. Peter Buxton, a public health service social worker, tried staging several protests within the department to shut down the experiment. When his superiors continued to ignore him, he finally called the press. So on July 25th, 1972, the Washington Star ran Buxton's story, and the next day it was on the cover of the New York Times. The U.S. government had broken its own laws and experimented on its own citizens. Incriminating signatures from everyone in the public health department were all over the documents. Thus, the Tuskegee experiment finally came to an end. Sadly, by then only 74 of the original test subjects. Only 74 of them survived. Approximately 40 of the patients' wives had become infected, and 19 of the men had unknowingly fathered children born with congenital syphilis. Now, they just set them, not only did they let the men die and rot and slow death while they studied it and took notes, pretending to inject them with a medication that would help them, they were really injecting them with placebos. So while they were testing these men and watching them slowly die, they were watching them spread it to their wives, to their kids. Like, it's absolutely fucking sickening. And yet, even after the truth came out, the Public Health Service didn't apologize. John R. Heller Jr., the head of the Division of Venereal Diseases, publicly responded with a complaint that the Tuskegee experiment was shut down too soon. The longer the study, he said, the better the ultimate information we could derive. Ain't that some fucking shit? Eunice Rivers insisted that none of her patients nor their families resented her for her part in the study. They love Mrs. Rivers, she said. In all of this that has gone on, I have never heard anyone say anything that was bad about it. Are you shitting me, girl? And here's the kicker. Here's a real kick in the balls. The Tuskegee Institute apparently agreed. In 1975, 3 years after the Tuskegee experiment became public knowledge, the Institute presented Rivers with an Alumni Merit Award. Your varied and outstanding contributions to the nursing profession, they declared, have reflected tremendous credit upon the Tuskegee Institute. Holy load of shit. And in 1997, the U.S. government formally apologized to the victims. President Bill Clinton invited the last 8 survivors and their families to the White House and apologized to them directly. Oh, isn't that so sweet? He told the 5 survivors that attended, "I am sorry that your federal government orchestrated a study so clearly racist. Your presence here shows us that you have chosen a better path than your government did so long ago." Well, isn't good job. What the fuck, Bill? Wow. Now, if that's not a story to blow your hair back for a minute, man, just sit and soak that in. That shit is crazy. Wow. So anyway, there's the story. There's a little video I wanted to do on the Tuskegee experiments. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something from it. I know I learned a few things. Anyway, happy holidays, everybody. Be loved. Be blessed. I love y'all, man. Take care. This has been Lights Out Radio. Yeah.